Hello. In this video, I wanted to try and do a stone pillared, and I'm going to do that in a more of an organic fashion, which means I'm going to try and do it by sketching it out rather than planning it out with an isometric view, like plotting it out really well. I'm going to avoid the isometric view as well because that's very, when you do that, it tends to lock you into that sort of line or blind perspective. I mean, it does, because otherwise it would not be isometric perspective, but everything tends to come out a bit blocky. So I want to do this different approach, which is more of a normal conical perspective, or what you would call, in this case, a 2-point perspective. See what that looks like. And I'm not using a mouse, I'm using a tablet, so that means that my lines are going to be probably a little bit more organic than if you were to do it with a mouse, even though it doesn't really mean anything. It's just that I tend to be more pencil-like if I'm using the pen rather than the mouse. So here we should have a lot less, because this is almost like if you're standing a little higher than the stone pillar, you should actually not see the top that much. All right, so I have the sketch, bottom sketch, and now before I do the, and I was thinking about doing the line art, but because the line art can also be sort of, can also make you stick to the whole perspective thing, I decided that instead I'm going to use shades right straight into the model. So I'm going to go for some sort of greenish stone colors. Something like that, and that's sort of halfway in the top. I'm going to be simple about it. I'm going to do, this is going to be my mid-tone. And again, I'm very roughly shading in, or putting in the shapes. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Failed this bit. So there we are. And as well as the faces here. My voice has probably changed a little bit because I actually tilted myself to draw this. Okay, so you have the faces right there, and now I just need my highlights and my shadows. I'm going to start by my shadows, and I'm actually going to move on to the blues because I want to make sure that it doesn't really, that I don't have such a fixed palette right away. So a little bit darker than what I did now. I just need to close that off at the other color so that I can flood fill that in. And I need to keep track of where my cuts and the stones are, so I'm sort of leaving these sort of cuts. You can see one here. I'm leaving those in so that I'm sure of where I stand in a way. So now shading the bottom faces here. I hope that it's easy to understand that these are sort of a couple of boxes and then a taller box sitting on top of that. So now the highlight. The highlight, I want to move into the yellows. And well, probably not too yellow, but because we're close, we're going to use a gray that's close to being actually non-saturated, like a completely flat gray. And since we have two cold colors in our image, we're going to be suggesting that this is a warm color for the highlight, but it's actually not. It's fairly neutral. Okay, so problem number one. The highlights here can't be this color. They have to be a normal ambient color. So I'm going to use the mid-tone right now, but I'm going to change that later because we still need to do the cast shadow and all that. But I'm going to use that as well. Not for the highlights here. I need something a little less strong. So I'm going to go halfway between these by selecting the highlight, pressing 5 on my keyboard for 50% transparency, paint a little bit there, and then I bring that up back to 100% opacity. I color pick that and shade that in like that, and then I can delete this because now I have my color. And I can do that for the top here, and I can do the same for the shadow. So 50% of the shadow, I'll pick this up, and that will be my shadow color for now at least. Okay, because I might change this later. But right now I made a couple of cuts on my stone. Now I want to do the same for the other side, but because this is already a shadow, I have to decide whether or not I want to add a different shade, and I do. I want to have a darker shade, which is actually doesn't need to be that much darker, but I'm going to add it like that. And for the highlight, I'm actually going to use this midtone that I created just then for the shadow on the brighter side of the pillar. Okay. So also want to get rid of some extra pixels that I don't want. So let's do a little bit of cleaning up, and I'm going to hide my line art layer so that I know my silhouette very well. And at the bottom here, I'm actually going to change now the shadow. I'm going to change it to the shadow that I have at the top there. You see it, because now it doesn't contrast so much with the dark side. I keep saying dark side, and it's huge. It annoys me that it refers so much to Star Wars, but anyway. So my stones right now are uneven because the top two are a little thinner than the bottom one, and that I could actually capitalize on that. I could probably move this up a little bit. So now it's a completely decorative pillar, and so I just duplicate these down like that. So now it's a decorative pillar. It's not really made up with same size rocks, and that gives room for some weird decorations, like it could have something carved in, and I'm using the edges that are facing towards the lip part a little brighter, and the edges that are facing away, I make them a little darker so that you get that sense of carved in. Then maybe some motives in here, but I don't know what for now. So I'll just leave it like that. Or maybe you could have, so just sort of break it, I could have it cut into two pieces, for example. Like have that, and for example, just duplicate that over to the top. Something like that. Okay, so it would mean that I would have to make something on this side as well. And there, maybe it's a little too bright. I still feel that this shade is a little too bright. So I'm going to pick it, hide the selection, and bring down its lightness so that it doesn't look as strong on the other side as it does. It's a bit of a two-way thing, because if I make it a little darker, it'll look too dark on this side, so I'll just find a halfway. Now, because this is rock and it might be polished, I do want to have a highlight, like really spotlight color, so I'm just going to go closer to white and add a bit of that at the top. I'm going to use this highlight to bring it down on the edge of the stones as well, and use that one, the midtone, as an anti-aliasing color. I might go in, actually let me make this a little shorter so that I can keep this tone here. I might go in and add a highlight here and there just to suggest that there's a sort of spot on the rock that actually shines quite well. And now I'm going to add some cracks and some stuff for variation. So I'll just go with my dark tone here, not the full dark one, but the dark one, and make a crack. And because it's very horizontal, I'm still going to get some highlights. Okay, so I'm going to get some shade here. Maybe that should be like that instead, and that should be like that. Okay, so there's a crack. I could do some piece that fell off. It sort of cracked off like that. So that means the bottom's going to be a little darker as well. Maybe not that. Maybe just that, like that. Maybe a bit of a highlight there for the chipping area, and maybe a little cut here. But because it's a vertical cut, you don't see the. There's not much of a highlight. So maybe just sit here at the bottom a little bit, something like that. Maybe we could go off to the side just a little, as well as here. The whole point of adding this is to break the monotony, or to make this more interesting than it originally is, because it can be very boring to see the same thing. So you just create some variation, right? Like breaking the silhouette, you could actually make a cut in there and then shade that in dark, and that would be another crack, for example. You could cut this part completely off and have it shade with a highlight color to suggest that it's a bit that broke off on the other edge. You could now go in and add some sort of foliage or something to make this look a little more dirty. But I think the idea that I wanted to show, which was that you can go organic on things and still have them work. I think I've made that point. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you guys later.